Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time. And I had to talk to somebody about this Jack Dorsey tweet. He talked about hyperinflation is here. It is coming to the United States, and it's really scary. So how you doing, Greg? I thought I would talk to you about this morning. Did you see that tweet
great.
or that topic?
Oh, I saw the tweet, not just the United States, but, the whole entire world, and it's going to hit the entire world. And, that's our economic tsunami.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was an interesting tweet. Yeah. So I first off, when you read it, when you saw it, I mean, what was your first thought? What did you think? Because I'll tell you mine in a minute, but I don't want to lead the witness.
Hyperinflation is a real concern. We're already seeing it at the asset level. Call it what you want, but we're there. Valuations in the markets, commodities, real estate. We're seeing, record highs every day in every asset pretty much. It's crazy. We are seeing costs go up across the board for a lot of different things. It's not hyper yet. It is in a lot of other parts of the world, but in the United States, it's not quite there yet, but we're well on our way. And if the Fed and Treasury can't get control of things, and, we keep printing and keep spending and keep doing stimulus after stimulus and, throwing more dollars into circulation, that's what you should end up with, although we haven't yet. And we've been on this train, arguably not quite as much as we have in the last year or 18 months, but, since 2009 and 10, we've been stimulating the economy. We've been doing, bond purchasing and things like that. We've had record low interest rates. At some point you would think that would have to start having a hyperinflationary effect, but it hasn't.
Yeah.
The last 9 or 10 years.
Yeah. So the first thing when I read it, I honestly wanted to throw my phone against the wall. I seriously did, because hyperinflation is a thing, right? It's something I studied. So the first thing I wanted to do is throw my phone against the wall. And then I realized who Jack Dorsey is, right? He's Twitter and I think Square. Anyways, another company, both investing in Bitcoin, right? So he's a Bitcoin fan. So, right, know thy source.
Well, he's a Bitcoin maximalist, so that's different. So Bitcoin maximalists believe Bitcoin fixes everything. It's going to be the world reserve currency. You don't need anything else. And the solution to the world's,
everything
all the world's
Bitcoin.
problems is Bitcoin. Now, the biggest funny thing is that they think the argument is that Bitcoin is actually deflationary as a currency versus the dollar being inflationary, meaning you can inflate the circulation of the dollar. You can't inflate the circulation of Bitcoin because there's only 21 million to ever be created.
Yeah.
A lot of that's already been lost, will never be recovered, is dead, whatever. But think about that concept. Okay, how can Bitcoin be, or how can any currency like that be deflationary if it goes up in value? Let's say one Bitcoin becomes worth $1 million. Well, then what happens? Well, you pay more for stuff. Yeah. So if you're operating on a currency that just continually goes up, well, the price of things will go up accordingly because you have so much more and you can afford so much more. So anyways, that's what a Bitcoin maximalist is. That's what Jack Dorsey is. He said that Bitcoin is the most important thing in his life that he will dedicate the rest of his life to.
Yeah, I heard that.
He's a little eccentric as well.
Yeah, let's not forget that, of course. But yeah, so again, I wanted to throw my phone, then I remembered the source, and then I went back to my roots, right? When in doubt, I go look at data. So again, this is actually, we studied this when I was getting my econ degree. So there was a paper written in 1958. I talked about it yesterday on my daily financial news. I cited the author. I can't remember it now. But anyways, it talks about the minimum threshold to call an environment hyperinflation is 50% a month, not 50% a year, 50% a month. That is hyperinflation, right? They're like, that's the minimum bar to use that term appropriately. And again, the world is seeing that right now. Look at what's going on in Lebanon. Look what happened in Venezuela. It can happen. It is not coming to the United States. We will not
places
see
in Africa. South Africa, their currency is, struggling, and they're seeing a lot of that repercussions. But yeah, hyperinflation is a whole different animal. So
it ain't coming.
Defined it as
50% a month is the minimum to call an environment hyperinflationary. An article from 1958 by some econ, laureate. So that's where the definition is. So Jack, it ain't happening. But, and the reason you can say that with pretty good certainty is because even, if you had 10% a month in the United States, that would wreck a lot of things. And even then, Jerome Powell or whoever is our next Fed president will just raise rates a la what Paul Volcker did, right? They'll just raise it to break the back of inflation. We know how to break inflation. It's not fun, but we know how to do it. So hyperinflation is not coming. We could have we are having high inflation could go higher. We could have, I don't think we will, but I think we could have 7, 8, 9% a month, which is horrible for us, but we're not going to have 50% a month.
Yeah, even 7, 8, or 9% a month is kind of hard to comprehend because, what creates inflation? Generally demand.
Yeah.
Okay. These other countries, it was different. It was the governments just, seizing things and devaluing their currency and, doing all that. In the United States, there's only a path so far that we can go down. And what happens is people just push back, like we're seeing in the housing market.
Yep.
People are pushing back. They're not buying. So days on market's going up. Sellers are having to make concessions that, the market is shifting because people are just over it. Same thing happens at all levels. The only thing that you can't really push back on are the things that you have to have, which is food, clothing, shelter, gas, things like that. But even then, you'll push back to a point there.
Yeah, there's switching costs. You cut back, exactly.
You cut back. So that's where the stagflation comes in. So how does stagflation happen? You get hyperinflation or high inflation, not hyper, but you get up to a point where inflation causes people to cut back and their behavior changes. We are now at a point in this country with gas prices where that changes behavior.
Absolutely. We're seeing it.
People, you already have people that stop working, they've cut back on their expenses so they can not have to work because of, whatever the reasons are, early retirement, pandemic, kids at home, all of the legitimate reasons that people can't go back to work. Not,
for sure.
Not because they don't want to or won't, but they can't.
Yep.
And, and that's valid. So, wages are going up across the board, which they needed to, to catch up with prices and things. So that's costing more. Everywhere you look, you're getting less and you're paying more. And at some point, consumers push back and they just stop buying.
Yeah.
So that's what creates, stagflation.
Yeah. So let's switch, because again, Jack, you're wrong. Hyperinflation is not coming here. It's just, we know how to beat it. And it's just not coming. But let's talk about stagflation. There's a lot of talk about that. I think it was always an outside case. It damn near feels like the best case at this point. Right? We're going to have a stagflation where clearly costs are going higher. I think it's going to be constrained on wages because I think wages is the thing that kind of pushes this forward. And I think growth is going to be slower, certainly when you back out inflation. Like Q3, I think Q3 GDP is going to come in at 4%. And if you have an inflationary rate of 5%, do you really have growth? No, it's actually a -1 when you back out inflation. So I think stagflation is certainly a possibility. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's all demand driven. So our population is growing. So there's still demand. We're limited in terms of, resources and inventory levels of different things. So there's still a lot of demand there. We're coming into the holiday season. So the time for, people to really cut back and for, something like that to occur is probably, Q1 next year. So, we'll see how it all shakes out. But, again, as prices go up, people will push back. They'll stop consuming. We're a consumption-based economy, society. I mean, the world revolves around people buying and selling goods.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think stagflation is a possibility. I think I just think we're going into an environment. There's a lot of talk about employment, right? There's 11, I forget what the numbers were, something like 11 million job openings and 7 million unemployed. There's this whole mismatch. I really do think that we're going to see wage inflation like we haven't seen in my adult lifetime, right?
We're seeing it already. I mean, the employers are having to offer all kinds of bonuses, incentives, double, their pay rates, which is great.
Yeah.
But when you add all of the other things on top of it, if you start to notice when you're out and about, store shelves are looking emptier. Prices are going up, and as you go up, to certain places, they're all out of little things because they just can't get it. So there's still plenty of demand out there. But if we can't produce to keep up with demand, then naturally you're gonna, you're going to be shrinking in terms of growth. The real question is how bad does this inflation get? How bad does that, really affect things as we move forward? And what is the Fed's response as they start the taper? The markets, start to pare back a little bit. How far are they going to let that go? They're going to have to raise interest rates at some point, to reduce the liquidity out there. So, how far can they really go? And then what are the results when they realize they can't?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about inflation. I hadn't planned to do this, but I thought I'll ask anyway. Let's say the number's 4% inflation. Do you think we're above 4% in 22? Because we're clearly above it in 21. Do you think
Oh
we're
yeah, I mean, again, we're double digits right now because they don't count housing,
yeah.
rent, there's a lot of things that they don't put in that number. So it's really it's a silly number. It makes zero sense how
Yeah,
they
in the
measure
real
inflation.
world. Yeah. So do you think inflation is pretty sticky for the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think so. I don't
Yeah.
see it, changing anytime soon.
Yeah. Wage inflation is one of those things it's not immediate. It's not like a barrel of oil that goes from 60 to 120 and it's like everybody's got to buy it at 120 now. Wages kind of creep up. It starts at the bottom and it takes time to go through. So um
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, that's again a supply and demand. So right now, the job market is in the hands of the employees.
no
Okay.
question.
Employers have lost control of the job market. There's certain jobs in certain areas that are still pretty competitive where people are lining up. But for the most part, your service industry jobs, the backbone of the economy, they cannot get people, to fill those positions. So, the real question is, what does that look like moving forward? And, if and when people just have to go back to work and take those jobs and the employers have a little bit more leverage, that ideally, not ideally, but that usually brings the rates down when there's more workers than there are jobs. But, we've never been in a position in this country we're in right now where there's, I get you, it's probably tenfold the jobs that there are people looking for work. I
Yeah,
mean, I heard reports of job fairs for the airlines where they thought thousands of people were going to show up. They had 100.
I actually talked about that on my daily financial news. Denver Airport did a job fair. 5,000 people expected, 100 showed up. That's not good.
Yeah, interesting. So, that's just something we've never seen. And go back to the 70s and, the times in the past, a lot of the issues in the economy were because there was no jobs. The Great Depression, the recessions we've seen, 2008 and 9, the construction industry, the real estate industry were decimated, no jobs.
Yeah.
There was 10% unemployment because there were no jobs.
Yeah.
We got probably 20% unemployment right now because people are like, forget that. I'm
I'm going to do something else. I'll be an entrepreneur. Exactly. I'm going to go start my own thing. Yeah.
Hey, which is what I'm all about. And
exactly.
I think there is no better time. There's never been a better time in the history of the world to start your own business than right now, because there is so much demand out there. You can call your own shots. You can be an independent contractor, and all kinds of ways that you can carve your own path. And I think it's a great time.
Yeah, I'm actually just looking it up because I told you that your story is in my book. I just forgot what chapter it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's way easier right now than it was when I started.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's on chapter 9 in my brand new book, 15 Conversations with Millionaires. It's your American dream story. It's your truck in a toolbox. It's an awesome story. It had to be in the first book. So yeah,
I love it. I mean, that's why I do what I do with the coaching and the courses that I put out there and stuff. It's to help people carve their own path so they have choices and they don't have to, go take a job if they don't want it. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's great if you want to do that. But if somebody wants to have their own thing, write their own schedule, be at home with their family, now for people watching, the life of an entrepreneur, it's not all, roses and, rainbows. I mean, you still have to be accountable to your customers. So it's not like you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. You still have to do things and be accountable, and you're taking risk. But at the end of the day, you can have flexibility. You can work from home. You can work from anywhere, these days. And it's really, really interesting times.
Yeah, folks, do yourself a favor. You got to follow Mr. Greg Dickerson on YouTube, but he actually has all his information on his website, right? GregDickerson.com.
GregDickerson.com, YouTube podcast, all my social media. Go check it out.
Yep, follow him. And if you have any interest in being an entrepreneur and you want to follow someone that's been there, done that, he is the man. So thank you very much, Greg.